32 teams in 32 days. Today, the Green Bay Packers. Welcome to a series where we deep dive on every NFL team's offseason from the very beginning, when head coaches are being hired, all the way to present day with preseason happening. Here's a list of videos that we're going to be dropping for 32 straight days, from August 1st to September 1st. If you see a team that you're a fan of and that video is coming up, I encourage you guys to hit that subscribe button so you can stay notified when we drop that video on that respective date. The Packers' window of opportunity to win that Super Bowl is still open, and honestly, it's been open for a very long time under Matt LaFleur, going into his 7th season with the team, hired back in 2019. Very successful, has coached 100 regular season games, 67% of the time he's winning them. Postseason, not the best record, but they have been to the conference championship a couple of times. Want to make that happen with Jordan Love at quarterback now. Their offensive and defensive coordinators, they remain the same. Offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich. Offensively, in the last 2 years, they have ranked in the top 12. I think in 2023, they ranked 11th in yards per game. And then in 24, last year, it was 5th. So they had a top 5 offense. And then defensively last year, they also had a top 5 defense. This year, however, defensively speaking, they may not finish inside of the top 5 in yards allowed per game just because they took some hits this offseason. They lost some key players on defense. But regardless of what the roster looks like, Matt LaFleur finds a way to win 2/3 of his games on average. Doesn't matter what the defense looks like, doesn't matter what the offense looks like, and the lack of weapons, if you want to call it, for Jordan Love, which is not the case this year. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video. Matt LaFleur finds a way, and their window of opportunity of contending for a Super Bowl is still open. Let's look at the free agency adds and losses and key in on those losses on the defensive side of the ball. The biggest name is Jaire Alexander, one of the more premier cornerbacks in the last several years. He was released a late release back in June after he was offered a restructured contract. They wanted to get a deal done. Alexander wasn't a fan of whatever they were offering. They just couldn't get a deal done. He moves on. He's with the Baltimore Ravens now, but losing a key piece like that is pretty big and a tough hit for the Green Bay Packers defense. However, this coaching staff believes in the guys that they have. So Keyshawn Nixon, who was a special teamer, he's going to be taking some kick returns we expect this year. He gets promoted to be an outside corner, a full-time starter. He started some games last year, but now we expect him to be one of those top 2 cornerbacks for the Green Bay Packers, alongside Nate Hobbs, who they also signed. Offensively, their marquee signing was Aaron Banks, the free agent guard that came from the 49ers. He kind of replaces Josh Myers. Myers was the center, so there's going to be a lot of shifting that's going around. We'll talk about that when we get to projected starters, but Aaron Banks is going to be filling in at left guard, and they're going to shift their current starters around, and one of them is going to be the starting center for 2025. Moving on to draft picks. Round 1, pick 23, Matthew Golden. Packers fans, sigh of relief. The Packers have drafted a first-round receiver in over 20 years, the first one that they drafted. Trivia question, do you guys know who was the last receiver that they drafted in the first round? Leave a comment down below if you know the answer. But Matthew Golden is coming from Texas, has a lot of speed, and we expect him to be the wide receiver 1 for Jordan Love. And this isn't Matt LaFleur's definition of wide receiver 1. He doesn't like to view one guy as a wide receiver 1. He says that he has 4 guys, and they're all wide receiver 1s, in Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jayden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. We don't believe that's the case with Matthew Golden just because of the news that's coming out of camp centered around him. People are raving about his catch radius, about his speed, about his athleticism. They believe that he is going to be the guy for Jordan Love, and we believe that he's going to lead all Packers wide receivers in targets. And then the rest of the draft picks, I mean, compared to Matthew Golden, Golden is really much the only guy that we see being a day 1 immediate impact starter. Everybody else is kind of depth just because they already have their starting lineup already set. They already figured it all out in free agency. Anthony Belton, it's great that you add a 2nd-round offensive tackle, but I mean, maybe he can compete with Jordan Morgan for some added depth. Savion Williams, added depth at the receiver room. I mean, we already got that with Golden, but maybe they just wanted some depth while Christian Watson is recovering from his leg injury. So everybody else is just added depth. Golden is the only one that we can really see starting from day 1. And speaking of the projected starters, let's start with offense. At the quarterback position, Jordan Love, no questions about that. Malik Willis, a solid QB2 in relief of him. Josh Jacobs, if we move on to the skill position, the solid 3-down back for the Green Bay Packers. And it's kind of funny because Matt LaFleur has stated in the past, actually prior to signing Josh Jacobs, that He likes a more running back by committee approach. That's just his philosophy. He utilized it with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, A.J. Dillon. However, last season, give the ball to Josh Jacobs 300+ times. Emmanuel Wilson still carried it 103 times. So they utilized their RB2 a lot, running the ball over 400 times a year. And right now we have Wilson as the RB2 just because Marshawn Lloyd, who was drafted in the 3rd round last year, played in 1 game, had 6 carries for 15 yards. We're going to put Wilson in that spot until Lloyd gets healthy. And not only can he get healthy, but prove that he's deserving of that RB2 spot. And then to wide receivers, wide receiver 1, Matthew Golden, as we stated, is going to be the wide receiver 1. And then opposite of him is actually Romeo Doubs. So he gets targeted year after year, probably over 90 times, or if he's injured, he's on pace to be targeted over 90 times a year. He's actually on the field 80 to 90% of the time on offense. So he is one of the starting wide receivers. And then in the slot, Jaden Reed. Their wide receiver 4 and 5, Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson. Christian Watson is still recovering from a torn ACL that he suffered late last season. And then Dontavian Wicks. I feel like a lot of fantasy football TikTok bros are going to get mad at me that I don't have Wicks as the wide receiver 1. This is why Dontavian Wicks is the best Packers wide receiver. This isn't fantasy football. Now, I'm not saying that he's not great. When I watch him play and fill in for any of these receivers that are injured, beautiful, awesome receiver. However, I think the coaching staff has a good idea of which players they want to put out on the field. And right now, Wicks doesn't have the capability to be on the field 80 to 90% of the time like Romeo Doubs. At least that's not the preference for the coaching staff. He's not going to be the guy that makes the front office pass up on a 1st-round receiver, the first one that they drafted in over 20 years. He may work in a little bit with Jaden Reed in the slot. However, Jaden Reed is above him on the depth chart just because of his receiving capabilities, what he can do in the run game. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife, also heavily utilized in special teams. And then to the offensive line. So this is the shifting around that we were talking about. So at center last year, it was Josh Myers. Now he's with the New York Jets. Elton Jenkins was playing left guard. Now that Aaron Banks gets signed, he's still going to be playing guard, but Elton Jenkins is now going to shift to the center. And then the rest of the offensive line is going to stay the same. It's going to be interesting to see if Jordan Morgan, their 1st-round pick from 2024, has any possibilities of getting into that starting lineup. Last year, his play on the field, according to Pro Football Focus, was kind of middle of the pack, kind of average. So we'll see if he has any sort of ascension going into his sophomore season. Moving on to the projected starters on defense, that defensive line filled with former 1st-rounders, with Kenny Clark being that veteran. He's been with the team for, it seems like 10 years now at this point. He's going to be going into his 10th season. Then to the linebackers, nothing changes here. Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, and Isaiah McDuffie. And then the secondary. This is where the shifting of the defense is going to happen with Javon Bullard, who's the starting free safety from last season with Xavier McKinney. He's going to be promoted now into a nickelback or slot corner position, if you want to call it a promotion. It's just a different role for him. Just because of the pieces that they lost with Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, they could use some cornerback help. And Bullard, who has the capability of playing corner, slot corner especially, he'll be promoted into that role when they have 5 defensive backs on the field. And because of that, Evan Williams, who was the backup to Bullard last season, we expect him to be the starting free safety. And then to special teams, Brandon McManus is probably the only new thing. I mean, he was the kicker last season for a little bit, but now he is the permanent kicker for the Green Bay Packers. And good for him, dealing with some unfair allegations off the field. He got past all of that, and now he will be the kicker for 2025. Now moving on to stat projections for the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Starting with Jordan Love going to his 3rd season as a full-time starter of the Green Bay Packers. He's been solid, and what we project for him is yet again another solid season. 4,100 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Actually, as a matter of fact, on average, over the last couple of seasons as a Green Bay Packers starter, he has averaged just shy or just over 4,000 yards and probably 30 to 31 touchdowns. I wanted to bump up the numbers just a bit just because of the addition of Matthew Golden. He finally has a weapon in that Green Bay Packers receiving room. Then to the running back, it's going to be the RB1, the 3-down back, Josh Jacobs. Doesn't get utilized too heavily in the pass game, so you could see Emmanuel Wilson coming in on relief, maybe in some third down situations if it's not third and short. 301 rushing attempts is what we project for him, close to 1,300 yards, and then that goal line back, 14 touchdowns, averaging 4.3 yards per carry. So another solid season for Josh Jacobs. Keep on utilizing him as a 3-down back. And then the starting wide receivers, the top 3. Sorry, Fantasy Pros, don't have Dontavian Wicks on here. Just going to talk about the top 3 guys. That is Matthew Golden, Romeo Doubs, and Jayden Reed. Golden, we expect to be the most targeted receiver on this team with 91 targets, 58 receptions, 841 yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. As much as I've been giving praise to Golden throughout this video, you probably were kind of disappointed when you saw the stat line. You expected him to be maybe a 1,000-yard receiver, which could happen. However, what I expect is Matt LaFleur still sticking with his philosophy of getting all of his guys involved. Golden, yes, will get the lion's share of targets. It's still a lot of bodies in that room, not to mention the tight end, which we'll talk about in just a little bit with Tucker Kraft. A lot of targets, a lot of mouths to feed with Romeo Doubs, 87 targets, and then Jayden Reed, who usually gets 85, 90 targets. He's going to see his role diminish just a little bit, but he can be utilized a lot in the red zone, so 7 receiving touchdowns. Plus, not to mention, he is a very good special teamer. He'll be utilized on punt returns. And then to Tucker Kraft, the starting tight end 1. So for a little bit, it was supposed to be Luke Musgrave until 2023. He got injured. Tucker Kraft came in, looked great. Last year, it was his season. He ended up being the tight end 1 on that team. They want to utilize Tucker Kraft in a lot more ways in the passing game. So we bumped up his target share just a little bit to 75 targets, 7 receiving touchdowns. So he's going to be utilized a lot in the red zone. But a pretty good season for Tucker Kraft. To wrap up the video, we have projected records for the Green Bay Packers. I don't like to give just one record and say that is it, that is what's going to happen, and anything outside of that, it is completely wrong. I like to give a window, a floor, and a ceiling. Minimum, how many games are the Packers going to win? Maximum, how many games are they going to win? And if we put up the graphic, 8-9 record, so minimum 8 wins for the Packers is what I'm expecting. The ceiling, maximum 12 wins for the Packers, and winning the division and making the postseason. So going 12-5 in the NFC North, you are capable of winning the division. Just because if you watch the Lions video, the deep dive that I came out with earlier in the month, I talked about how the Lions could take a little bit of a hit because they lost not just one coordinator, but 2 coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. So it's going to be a little bit of shift, a little bit of adjusting, especially early on in the season for the Lions. And guess what? Early on in the season, week 1, the Green Bay Packers are playing the Detroit Lions at Lambeau Field. So that could more than likely be a victory for the Packers. But what I'm expecting for them is for them to go 10-7, make the postseason, but not get a division win, just because when we mapped out the schedule for the NFC North, we had the Lions also going 10-7, and they win the division because of a tiebreaker. But, I mean, if you're tied, it's just a matter of which games do they win. I'm still expecting 10-win seasons out of both teams, with the Bears probably 1 or 2 games behind them. The Vikings kind of being up there too, but it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment with J.J. McCarthy essentially playing in his rookie season, if you want to call it that. But the Packers making the postseason at 10-7. Again, another winning season for Matt LaFleur. But if you agree or disagree with not just the record projection, anything that I discussed in this video, leave a comment down below. I'd love to interact with y'all. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date when we come out with more videos in this 32 deep dive series. Tomorrow, it is the Miami Dolphins. Some people don't think they're capable of making the AFC playoffs, and also, is the health of that team a concern at all? We're going to be discussing all of that in tomorrow's video. With all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you tomorrow.